Hello and welcome everyone to Karma Union, a knowledge sharing session curated by Karma Marketing. My name is Rachel and I'm pleased to be here today for our first roundtable discussion. Today, I'll be your moderator and I'm very excited to have our speakers join us in the conversation. Today, we'll be exploring the discourse on mindfulness leadership and specifically looking at how mindfulness can impact business decision makings. And at its core, we're really trying to explore what it means to some of us in our different industries, roles, and contexts. And today we have three very, very different speakers from different backgrounds who will be sharing very different insights on how they perceive the matter. But before I get into that, I would like to get a feel of the room today. And so I'm going to launch a little poll and you might see it appear on your screen. Let's take 1 minute to go through three very simple questions to address why we're here today. And of course, to see whether or not, you know of today's topic. So 1 minute started. Look at your screen and there's a poll there. All right. I see people are starting to engage. So our first question is, do you know what mindfulness means? It seems like a majority of us do know what it means. And perhaps some of us are in between, sort of. That's fine. That's the whole reason why we're here today. Second question, where do you incorporate mindfulness? Home, work, relationships. It looks like a majority of us incorporate mindfulness in our relationships, and some of us do it mostly at home. And surprisingly, not many of us do it at work. So I am very intrigued to know this because today we're going to explore the possibility of looking at mindfulness at work. Last but not least, how important do you rank mindfulness when it comes to your decisions at work? It seems like all of us agree that it's very important. So very wonderful. Today, we will look into how that process might look like. And so I'm very excited for that. Thank you for participating in our poll. And I'm going to end it right now. So let's begin by looking at the definition of mindfulness. What does mindfulness mean to you? I mean, you could easily go to Google and search this term and you'll come across various definitions. But to put it simply today, let's look at mindfulness in a way that we're trying to maintain a moment-to-moment awareness of our thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and surrounding environment. It typically involves this concept called acceptance, which means paying attention to our thoughts and feelings without judging or even sometimes without believing in it. So for instance, we're looking at the concept of right and wrong without having to take a side. And we're trying to figure out how we think and feel in any given moment in the most honest and thoughtful way possible. Now, if I were to backtrack a little bit, mindfulness is actually a Buddhism word that came from the language of Pali, and it comes from this term sati. But we won't go into the traditional meaning of it. If you were to look into modern context, mindfulness can recently be found in things like Zen or meditation. And in simple words, it involves training of this term sati, which means, as I mentioned, moment-to-moment awareness of present situations, present events, as well as being more mindful or having that ability to be aware of something that's happening within you. For example, we're all sitting here right now listening to this panel discussion today. This is a moment here as I'm speaking to you, as you're listening over there. This is an immediate moment that's happening right now. So if I were to take a couple of excerpts, since there are many that I love, but one by Shapiro Carlson, the definition of mindfulness is seen as mindful awareness is fundamentally a way of being, a way of inhabiting our bodies, our minds, our moment-to-moment experience. It is a way of relating to all experience, positive, negative, and neutral, in an open, receptive way. It simply knows and accepts what is here now. This is based on a book that talks about the art and science of mindfulness. Another definition that I really like by Ellen Langer, she wrote a book about mindfulness. The more we realize that most of our views of ourselves, of others, and of presumed limits regarding our talents, our health, and our happiness were mindlessly accepted by us at an early time in our lives, the more we open up to the realization that these too can change. All that we need to do is to begin the process of being mindful. So we often hear the words, be in a moment, when it comes to mindfulness. But I guess if you were to take it a little bit further, let's ask ourselves, like, what does that really mean to be in a moment? So if you were to simplify it today, I think the key to understanding or even becoming more open to this term is to look at mindfulness as something that can be fostered through formal and informal mindful practices. This could mean practical activities such as yoga, meditation, or other spiritual meets science related methodologies. Or if you talk about it informally, which is exactly what I would like us to attempt today, it is a very simple process of observation, which is to actively observe, which talks about your ability to simply notice things as they are. So we are actively trying to pay attention, actively trying to notice how we are as well as where we're at. So that is sort of an afterthought for us to dig into the definition. Now, why we're here today is to look at how does this word relate to the world of business? And particularly, we're talking about decision-making. Why is it that we're talking about decision-making? Because as business owners or leaders, or even someone who is within the working environment, we are constantly making decisions for everything that we do, whether it's a task, it's a problem. Most actions come from a place of choice. So I'm very excited to explore what this could mean from the three different business leaders. And in my eyes, I see them as mindful leaders. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers today. We have three speakers in our panel. Eli Harrell, he is the co-founder and chief of purpose of Valhalla. He is calling in from Philippines. And then our second speaker is Ayu Cornelia. She is the founder of a PR marketing agency, Cornelia & Co. And last but not least, Rosalin Das. She is the founder of Digital Tribe, a digital marketing consultancy, as well as a social enterprise, which I'll get them to introduce by themselves. So very quickly, I would like to say that today's panel discussion will revolve around like cultivating a sense of self-awareness in our thoughts and emotions, right? And this is essentially the first part that we're going to look into. But maybe before I throw in the questions, I'd like to invite the speakers to introduce themselves. And perhaps we can start with Eli, followed by Ayu and Rosalin. Eli, hello.
Sure. Hello, thanks for inviting me. And just quick introduction. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. Would say I spent the first decade and a half not very conscious in much of life, especially not business and definitely not leadership. Had a lot of problems that came from how reactive I was, and I made a lot of decisions that would have been much better if I had any idea what mindfulness was at that time. I've been living in the Philippines now for 9 years. I run a company that does we help purpose-driven kind of impact tech companies around the world to make sure they're building the right product. And I run a podcast called Products with Purpose. So I also have a social enterprise here in the Philippines. I'm doing a lot of things and also trying to not be stressed out, but usually
Beautiful.
not stressed out. Anyway, thanks for having me here.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Moving on, Ayu. Hi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Rachel, and also Eli, Rosalin, and everyone. My name is Ayu Cornelia. I'm from Indonesia, so it's my pleasure to be here to talk about mindfulness and to share about the positive vibes, the spirit that we can do for our marketing purpose. I have a public relations and marketing agency in Jogja in Yogyakarta. It's a cultural city in Java, if you might know. And I was marketing communication at Hyatt Agency Yogyakarta. And then being mindful is like I think I have to share my experience and knowledge to everybody surrounds me related to public relations and marketing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayu. Last but not least, Rosalin, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, are you Eli? And I'm so blessed to be here. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this among these esteemed speakers who has been practicing mindfulness for a long time and also creating amazing results. So thank you for having me part of you. And about me, I'm Rosalin from Malaysia. I have been in business for the past 12, 13 years, and I run 2 different businesses. One of it is social enterprise. And my life changed about 6 years back when I started to make decision with mindfulness, having that part of a decision making whenever it comes to job, whenever it comes to business decision, whenever it comes to relationship with my co-founder, as well as anyone that I associate with. I teach women to start business from home. And how do they come up with an idea, and how do they actually implement the marketing strategy to actually promote their business? But majority of the time, they come to me and say that I cannot focus. And I make decisions based on emotion, and I cannot keep myself grounded. And I give up easily as well because it's too overwhelming. So that's where the seeking happens to me as well, in a way of how do I help others as well as help myself? Because that's a very common problem, especially being a woman with a family, running errands. I'm very sure, Rachel, you will agree with me. It's not easy. So with that thought and with that thing is where the search began. And I came across a lot of method which helped me a lot, which is meditation, yoga, as well as EEFT, which is my favorite, which is my, I tap into positive energy, and it helps a lot to make myself grounded as well as keep me positive. And I have taught this technique to many women out there who's running business in Malaysia. And when they actually have this approach in their life, decision making becomes very much easy and they know where are they heading to. That's a little bit about me, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalin. I'm very excited to hear more about your experience. So thank you for that brief but beautiful introduction. So there we go. We've met 3 very different but inspiring individuals who run their own companies and play very different roles, yet seem to have encountered the experience of mindfulness in their work life. So let us now begin our official panel discussion, where we go in 3 different parts. So the first section will be based on a topic for about 20 minutes. So all 3 speakers will get to engage and share their experience on the matter. And we'll move on to stage 2 and stage 3, where we'll talk about the different elements of mindfulness. So let's talk about topic 1. So topic 1 is about identifying how becoming more aware of thoughts and emotions can influence our work decisions. This is a big statement because it taps into the word awareness. So I'd like to hear from our speakers how they have experienced the concept of awareness or self-awareness when it comes to making work decisions. Perhaps we can start off with Eli.
I would say that just on this topic, the first thing that comes to mind is that are you guys not getting any background noise? It's okay. Okay. In work decisions, we're almost always engaging with other people. I think when I forget who just mentioned that in their intro about, I think it was maybe Rosalin talking about working with her co-founder. How many times are we engaging with other people, whether it's people that work for us, people we're working for, or partners? And I would say the vast majority of the probably bad decisions I've made have come from either misunderstandings or just conversations that went sideways, and are the parts of our brain that we can call them lots of different things, like fight or flight, or your crocodile brain or your monkey brain, or like the parts of our brain that actually control us most of the time that throw us into bad energy states, just lead to the most terrible decision making. And most of it's in the way that we communicate with other people, and whether it's the tone of voice we use or the face that we're not realizing we have on, or the words that we use. So I think for me, the biggest area for quote unquote decision making. So we're not talking about, okay, what should the team decide to do next? But it's more like, how does the team decide to do things together? And I'm still not in a place where I can say that it's always 10 out of 10 all the time, but compared to years ago, yeah, just vast differences. And that starts with personal habits of ground, I think probably the biggest thing I've noticed over years of practicing meditation, not all day long, not half of every day, not even more than 20 minutes a day, but sometimes only 5 or 10 minutes most days for the last 5 or 6 years, just you start to get a baseline to really be aware of what calm and peaceful feels like. I think a lot of us are just going through life not realizing how far away we are from that. And even now I know the baseline, it's easier to notice when you can practice the awareness of noticing where in your body you're starting to feel tense, or you start to feel those initial signs that something someone is saying is triggering you, or that you're starting to have kind of an agenda, or you're afraid of something. So I think for me, the practice of meditation led to a better baseline awareness of what peaceful feels like, so that in those conversations where you start to feel things drifting sideways and you feel like you're getting, pretty separated from the other people you're talking to, or getting irritated with them, that you can kind of practice start to have a chance at practicing noticing the very first moments when things are going wrong inside you, and you can do a little bit of breathing, you can do a little bit of grounding even in the middle of the conversation, and definitely makes it a little bit more likely that you'll end up with a good situation with that conversation and whatever decisions you're making with other people.
It sounds like you've explored some sort of tool that enables this possibility of you becoming more aware of how you feel and think. I love that you mentioned the fight or flight term, because most times when it comes to making decisions, we find ourselves in that state, almost like in a state of pressure. So thank you for sharing that. Let's now hear from our next speaker. We've heard from Eli, and it sounds like he does meditation, and so he's figured out his own practices of mindfulness. So let's now hear from Ayu. Ayu, tell us a little bit more about your understanding of awareness, whether it's your thoughts or emotion, and how that has influenced your work decisions.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So as you mentioned before previously, that mindfulness is related also to aware of our condition, our present condition. And also, I like the word of observe, because we are trying to find out what is actually is lacking in our environment, or what can we do to help them, something like that. So that's also, in my opinion, is really answering this question. For number one, it's for myself is like we have to, for myself, I'm doing meditation. Actually, I'm doing a meditation twice a day. But it's really calm me down for everything, chaos in this world. I'm trying to be more mindful by doing meditation. So actually, as I mentioned before, that the PR and marketing agency that I lead in Indonesia, in Yogyakarta, often doing humanistic project that like those who needs our assistance in terms of social media, and also education, awareness, development for society. So for myself and my agency, we're helping some communities like kidney patients, and also lupus, those autoimmune communities, and also cancer, some of the cancer patients. So underlining those statements is that when we're relating marketing, mindfulness to marketing, is that we need to be aware our activity is that for profit or for non-profit. And then by doing that, we know how we direct our thoughts and emotions, because that's influence our decision making. That's all, Rachel.
Thank you, Ayu, for sharing that. And it's very impressive to know that you too found your own practice through meditation. Yes. And doing it twice a day sounds like a commitment. And I trust that it has provided benefits to your role as a leader in your company. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
All right, beautiful. Let us now move on to, last but not least, Rosalin. I'd love to hear more about your experience of awareness when it comes to your work decisions. I mean, you've talked about how you work with women specifically, and there are a lot of emotions there. So tell us, how do you experience this?
It's very, very interesting. Even the journey started of me exploring myself about how to manage the thoughts and be aware of it. The first time, without knowing any technique, without knowing what to do, it was very overwhelming. And you go into this, you feel very stuck, you feel very numb, you feel like you are lost. So, but the moment you actually get to know one or two, like for an example, I started the entire journey of mindfulness with meditation. Initially, it started 5 minutes also to keep your mind quiet is not easy, okay? Like how Eli said, whatever you call it, pink elephant, monkey inside your head, whatsoever, right? It's so difficult to keep that boy inside quiet. But what I started realizing is when I take myself out of the position and put myself as the third party, I could actually evaluate it better. The emotion can be seen in a much more clearer way. So since I started doing that and I started exploring more, I found that mindfulness has been very crucial in decision making. Especially, I deal with a lot of people in my work. Becoming a digital marketer, you deal with virtual people as well, and you don't even know what are they saying. People just come and tell. We've got a lot of keyboard warriors, which does affect a lot of people out there as well. So what I do is every day I practice my meditation as well as I do tapping to keep myself positive over time. One simple thing that I would like to share is this really happened that I was supposed to go for an interview, online interview. And about 45 minutes before that, I had a call, which is very, very stressful call, which was at a very high emotion call. And it was actually making me felt very frustrated and overwhelmed. And after that call ended, half an hour, I have to go for my live interview. In a normal circumstances, I probably would have canceled it because my mood was totally off. But what I did is I took a step back and I said, no, I could be doing this based on that. So how do I bring my emotion up? Sat down and did a bit of grounding work, and I did my tapping. Within 10 minutes, my mood was lifted and I went for the interview like as though nothing happened. And once I've experienced that, right, it has become like a daily routine that every time when I feel low, I don't make any decision. I wait until my energy has been lifted up before I make a decision. And not only that, I teach and guide everyone that I know, including my kids, including my family. My co-partner is like, I get her to sit with me. Let's do tapping, let's do meditation together. Let's just write down, we journal things together. That makes us very aligned. And she knows what I want even before sometimes I'm saying it. And my team, sometimes certain things become very overwhelming and they know the tone of Rosalin is not right. So they all said, okay, Rose, let's just be silent for a while. So we have came to that understanding with each another where we can read each another's energy. And every time being mindful when I'm doing things has always given me a tremendous results. And I talk this to all the women out there as well when they come and tell me, I just cannot think, Rose. I say, take a walk. Go, take a walk, and then come back. So that's my easy way of telling, and it always works.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rosalin. I mean, it sounds like you were able to find that courage to be honest about your practice and how you see life, and as well as how you experience yourself with your team members, which then enables them to understand like the environment further, because you're kind of putting your vulnerability out there, right? And when you do that, you basically invite others to meet you halfway with that, moments of stress. So thank you for that. With that, I would like to invite all our speakers back to the panel, and let's now explore this topic a little bit further. It seems to me that, I don't know if this was a coincidence, but all of you have your own mindfulness practice, and perhaps that came along somewhere in your self journey, and from there you were able to incorporate it into your company culture or the way you engage with your employees or your co-founders. So I'm very pleased to hear that. Also intrigued. So let's explore that a little bit more. Like, has there ever, we're talking about the good side now, that we're all like aware of our fight or flight moments, or we're aware that sometimes our mind gets noisy, and we know that, oh, this is a state where it's not a good time for me to make a decision, therefore I need to step out. Like, seems like we've been doing the hard work. Whereas like if we were to reflect back when we didn't know mindfulness, when we were a little bit more mindless, has there been any work decisions that perhaps brought overwhelming thoughts and emotions within you, and yet you still had to do it, in your work? Like, perhaps you can highlight a specific experience or project within your work experience. Anyone can go. Perhaps Ayu, would you like to share?
Okay, thank you. For me, I need to have a short break, like just to inhale and exhale, to think deeply, like, okay, if we do this, what is the consequence? And then we really need to be consider all aspects, like for human resources, etc., etc. So that's what I'm doing when I'm stuck, or if I have if I need to decide for a major decision. I need some time to really consider some factors, like the human resources and other resources.
Right. It looks like time is an important factor when it comes to this process. So thank you for that. What about you, Rosalin? Like, has there been any moment that you were like super overwhelmed and yet you decided on something anyway?
Yes, recently happened that it was a sudden, we had to go to the bank to do some banking stuff. And the banker said that he has to leave at 12 o'clock. So, and we need to get it done. And it was like about 10:30. We need to get this done by today. If it's not, it's going to have a very long Raya break that we won't be able to do anything. And here I have a another meeting that's going to happen at 11 o'clock, and me and my partner has to go to the bank to handle this, right? So without thinking, totally not in a mindfulness state, I gave her a call and told her, you know what, you come to my place, and my place to the bank is like 15-20 minutes. From her place to bank is also 15-20 minutes. I just called and told her that you take a Grab and come here, let's go together. Just give me 10 minutes, I will get ready. Without thinking. Then after for a while, then it gave me an idea that when I was getting ready, and I realized that she can always go to the bank first and get the process started, while I get ready and go there, and if this right on time and they can actually do this, why am I asking her to come here? That's going to be a waste of 20 minutes, and then we're going to go another 20 minutes. By the time probably the banker is going to go, you know what, I'm leaving. So then I'm like, okay, see, this is what happens to you when you don't think. So I told that to myself, and I called her back and I said, you know what, I think I see you in the back. So then she went like, yeah, that's the best decision. Why you never thought about it earlier? I'm like, yeah, I never. It would have been ended in a big disaster on that day. We wouldn't probably not have met him on time. But because of that, the switch happened that I could actually recollect back the thoughts and make a decision. We actually went there and completed everything within 40 minutes.
Wonderful.
So that's something that's crazy, right?
That's a good example. It shows that at one point, yeah, you're overwhelmed and you have to make a decision, and you do it anyway. And it may not be in a moment of clarity where it's the best option, but I think mindfulness is also about adaptability. And like when you're connected to your thoughts and emotions, you also know that it's ever changing, which means from moment to moment, you can actually change your decision and act faster towards a better or a different solution. So agility, I think, is something that we can, learn from your bank experience.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, Eli, what about you? I think you're currently experiencing one with construction sounds.
We got it figured out. So I think they're gonna stop. So that's good. On this topic, this question, and what comes to mind is that a lot of times the experiences I've had that come to mind are more around me, instead of the outside world forcing me to make a decision, even when maybe I'm not in the best state to do so. I think many times I've been the one that's forced conversations because I wanted to solve something, especially when I see that someone I'm talking to, like, let's say there's a misunderstanding or they've gotten upset or like we've just clearly misunderstanding each other. And I've many times I think it's really just from a lack of understanding of how the human brain works, is realizing when somebody's triggered. I didn't know this before, right? They're like when someone's already triggered and these parts of your amygdala is like controlling you, you can't just logic someone out of it. You can't just talk about how the misunderstanding happened and how, like getting clarity on understanding each other isn't going to happen when both people are already triggered. You're just going to probably keep triggering further and escalating no matter how much, even when you stay pretty calm, you still might do it. So I think I've actually created a lot of worse decisions and worse situations because I didn't see the wisdom in just stepping away and letting people calm down, let people breathe, just stop hammering that topic. So yeah, I think for me that one's been, sure, there's been, I'm sure, many situations too where we thought we needed to make a decision in the moment, but really almost never are things truly that urgent that you can't step away and revisit it 10 or 15 minutes later or 30 minutes later the next day. Like almost always we can. How many of us have ever been in a situation where somebody's about to press the red button to launch missiles? Like we're never really up against those kind of deadlines. We can almost always delay things. So yeah.
That's not what they tell us in the corporate working world, though. I mean, in the world of business, like realistically, I mean, there is a sense of urgency, and when we try to stick to professionalism, I mean, time is gold, right? Like I like to believe that, things can wait, but not all companies or clients or people that we deal with in the working world might understand that. So I don't know.
I
What
do think that
about that?
any conversation that you're ever in, I mean, presuming you're working with people you want to be working with,
Yeah.
If you said to them, like, look, I think right now my brain is not in a great state to make this decision, and if I make this decision right now, it's not going to be a good one.
Yeah.
I think I'll be much better in 10 or 15 minutes. Give me some time to I'm going to go do some breathing, going to get some, like, I'm going to let things, and then let me come back. This is the decision I think we should make. I mean, this is super hypothetical and ambiguous, but if you say to the person, like, obviously I'm not delaying here because I'm being lazy. I just don't think the decision I'm about to tell you, I don't feel whole body yes with it. I don't feel totally aligned with it. So here's what I think the decision is, but could you give me 15 minutes to make sure that I'm totally behind this? Or, 30 minutes or an hour. I bet most of the time people would actually really respect that kind of transparency and vulnerability.
I hear you. Yeah. When you frame it in that way, it is a decision. Anyway, the decision is, let's decide in 15 minutes later.
Exactly.
And it takes, I guess, confidence and courage to say such things and to stand your ground. So yeah, I agree in that. Wonderful. Thank you to all three speakers. We have 2 more minutes. I kind of want to talk about your decision-making process. I mean, everyone has their own methods when it comes to deciding, and I'd like to hear a little bit about your process when it comes to deciding within your company, and let's look at it in the context of making decisions alongside your team members, because we're talking about mindfulness, and I think one of the themes is to know that mindfulness also encourages us to be more considerate of the people that we work with and how our decisions affect others. So do you have anything that you can share when it comes to your work decision process? Anyone can start, feel free.
I'll just jump in and match what you just said, as I have a really fast framework that I try to always use, which is don't let your brain go to the how or the what until you've really considered the who and the why. Just spend all your time on that. And then let the what start to form, and then think about the how. I notice people a lot of times jump to the how, and they think because, oh, I can't see how to do it, or it might be hard, they give up on paths that they would have pursued longer if they'd really focused on the why and the who first. Get really clear about those.
That's a great one. I love a mind map of that, the how, why thing. Love that. Thank you, Eli. What about you, Ayu? What's your process? You're a busy woman. You deal with many different students every day.
Thank you.
How does it work for you?
I think I agree with Eli also for the 5W1H. Yeah, that's a very basic recipe for us as a communication person. Yeah, for 5W1H. But I have 7 tips that I can share it with you. Yeah, first of all is that regarding to mindfulness, that I do breathing. Yeah, to really aware that okay, we are doing this, we are doing that. And then the second one is, of course, meditation. If you can do it, you can do it just maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then it will growing along the day. You are comfort with it. And then the third one is that I do some researching, like readings and writing or anything. Yeah, just research doing related to the subject or object that we need to solve. And then, of course, being mindful of the journals or the sources that we selected. And then the next one is that we really have to confirm or make sure that all the sources that we choose have the values. Depends on us, it depends on our preference. And then the next one, of course, lesson learned also. We do make some mistakes in the past. By doing that, we trying to not to do it again. So we'll help to ourselves to improve our condition. And also the last one is that trust the process. Yeah, optimist, being mindful. That's all.
I love it. Very structured, these 7 steps. It starts with the self and then it carries on to how you would deliver it to others.
Yes.
I'm definitely going to write this down. What about you, Rosalin? What's your decision-making process?
Yeah, I do agree with Ally and Ayu on the why, who, then what, and then, and how. Because first of all, when making a decision for me is sometimes we have so many decisions to make in a day. So I first list down the prioritize which has to be made first and which can wait a bit more longer. And when it comes to individual, is much more easier because you can make the decision, it's you and yourself. But when it comes with the team, then you have to even though there is a structure, there's a plan, I always will discuss with the team in a very, very subtle, mindful way of communicating with them, asking them what they feel about this and how we can actually go ahead. So I will listen to them and their input and see how can we come up with the best decision for everybody. Like an example, recently, why am I saying this? Recently, we had a very difficult client that came to us. And I know by taking this particular client, we will make a lots of money. But the client was super difficult and was very overwhelmed, even just having a conversation or a meeting with him. And I can feel the entire team's energy was being drained out, even after the first initial meeting that we had. So the thought was like, I was so unsettled, I didn't feel comfortable taking up the project. And then it was a very meaningful project for our company at that time. But that's where we actually sat down and put everything on the table. And then we actually decided this is going to be very, very taxing taking this client up for us at that moment with the amount of work we already have, because it was a very, very, the client was asking for a lot of, let's say, impossible stuff, which we feel like we couldn't do it based on the time. So it was a very difficult decision that we made, but that decision has helped all of us to even grow bigger in terms of business as well as bonding as well as team, because we respected each another's boundaries at that time. And when the team members, all of us had this feeling that this client is overwhelming us, can we actually fulfill? And we went like, I don't think so. So yeah, so that's how certain decisions that we make, even though it can cost us, but we thought that being sane is more important. So that's one of an example, Richard.
Thank you, Rosalin. It sounds like you are very clear about your values as an individual and company, and you're not afraid to, stick to it regardless of the outcome, which I think is an important aspect when it comes to making decisions. It does come from what your beliefs are and what is important to you. And ultimately, that's how it affects whatever decision that you're going to make, whether it's for yourself and the company. So thank you to all three speakers. I think there's been a lot of insightful step-by-step process that we can take away from your insights. So I think we've pretty much covered topic 1 when it comes to awareness. We're going to now dig into topic 2, where when it comes to mindfulness, let's look about how it affects the way we manage ourselves as well as others. We want to understand how mindfulness can help us cope with stress and anxiety in the context of how most of us, go through our work life with different kind of thoughts, projects, issues, deadlines, goals. There's a lot of expectations, whether it's for yourself and your clients, as well as your employees. As a manager, you're managing people, and it's not just people who are taking a paycheck, it's people who have their own livelihoods, and they themselves go through their own version of stress and anxiety for the purpose of the company. We have read in several books, podcasts, that mindfulness can help or basically ease off emotions of stress or cope with situations of anxiety. But how does that exactly work for us, right? I mean, a lot of times as leaders, we come to a space where we try not to expose this side of us, because if you're going to show that you're stressed or that you're insecure or that you're not sure about where you are, then this uncertainty passes on to the rest of the team. Now, the truth is we all feel stress. So I want to invite the speakers back to the floor and to ask this question, like, can you describe a moment when you had experienced stress? And more importantly, like, how did it affect your leadership skills and how did you cope with it? Perhaps we can start with Ayu.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So the link between mindfulness and how it can help manage stress. To me is that, as we know, and maybe most of us aware, that mindfulness is actually lowering the stress response, in my opinion, yeah. As we discussed before with Rachel, that you were saying two words about adaptability and agility. So that's two words is also, I experienced that by doing more about mindfulness. So I have more ability to be more adept and then agile also. And when our brain is influenced by mindfulness, as we are calm down in the midst of chaos, as we are trying to be happy and enjoy everything, although actually we still have problems, troubles, etc., etc. But yeah, in my opinion, it's really decreasing the level of stress. And then when my brain is saying that, okay, everything is okay. I like the wording of everything happens for a good reason. So every problems that we are facing is actually having a good impact later. I don't know when, but I experienced that when I have problem, then or something that is not turn out as I am expecting, it's actually there's something good out of it one day. We'll know it one day. It could be the next day, it could be the next week after. So mindfulness is really helping to manage stress and anxiety as it influence the brain and also the emotion. Thank you.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you, Ayu. And yeah, I mean, it does affect the brain capacity. What about you, Rosalin? Like, what's your experience of stress and how has that affected your leadership skills?
Interesting question, because stress has always been a very interesting topic, because we deal with a lot of people and everybody comes with a lot of situation. So for me, I do get into the stressful situation when I'm not in control of the situation. It always happens when I do realize that when I'm not in control, or when the things happen without me, that I can't do anything to change it, then I became very stressful. So one of the very beautiful mechanism that I find working for me is I take a deep breath, I inhale and exhale, I take a book and I start journaling. What am I feeling right now? And I also start writing what is the trigger point that I'm feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? And every time if the stress goes to extreme, my heart will start beating very fast and then the anxiety will start setting in. So to avoid this, journaling helped me a lot to calm myself down. And then with the thoughts of the process, and also when I know the trigger and I know the emotion is getting where, and once I done the complete journaling with the breathing, and that give me enough time to ground myself. And then when you actually look into the same situation, now I'm in a total different mode, right? So the answers just clear in front of me and what to do next and why was it. Then you go and ask after 10, 15 minutes, why was I so stressful just now? So it's like literally writing it down and journaling about the exact feeling and what the trigger point is and why am I stressed? I ask that question to myself. Is this something that I can control? No. Then what can I do? How can I do this better? Or how can I make this better for other party? So when this question comes to me and when I actually see it on the paper, it gives me much clearer situation. end of the day, every single decision or every single mishap that happens, especially with everybody that I work around, I know every time a trigger point happens that I get stressed or I get upset or I get overwhelmed, my mood goes haywire. So nowadays, I realize that, and I keep quiet and I just tell them, give me 5 minutes, I'll come back. So that 5 minutes has helped me a lot, Rachel, to manage my stress. If not, I always will say, if I don't have that, right, I might not be the same person who I am today.
The 5-minute rule.
Yes.
Wonderful. It sounds like self-inquiry is one of your methods to cope with stress. And it's interesting that even leaders would take time to journal and to reflect on their emotions and thoughts. So thank you for that. Sounds like, what about you, Eli? What's your coping mechanism when it comes to stress, and has that ever affected your leadership skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think affecting our leadership skills and stress, how could they not? It's anyone who's ever led anyone, I'm sure, has experienced their stress levels affecting the way they lead. I can't imagine anyone would say no to that one. But my personal, like, I guess the way I would approach this topic is Tony Robbins talks about having like a tool belt of state change, you know, like figuring out what things you can do to change your state. And I think so much of success in life is really about having a tool belt that works for you. And I think we all need to figure out over time which of those tools work best for us that we can pull out at different times, because there are days where sitting in one place journaling is going to help me, and there's days where that's not going to help me. And there's days when I can sit and meditate or listen to some guided meditation or do jumping jacks, or, you know, there's like a various number of different things you can do. Sometimes even just smile at yourself in the mirror. Like there's a lot of different things you can do. Sometimes none of those really work, and I have to like get out of the house and go get in some sunshine, or have a phone call with somebody that you can verbally process something with. And sometimes you just can't do it yourself. You're just going to get stuck in your own head. So I think that's not an easy answer, like where there's a one size fits all catch all that's always going to work every single time. I don't think there is. An ice bath or a cold shower can also really help. So just figuring out what are these different things that work for you, and recognizing the overall impact to your entire life success that will come from a commitment to show up as your best self, which is something I did not at all understand for a very long time. I just did not understand like how much that's going to matter in the kind of results you get. You think you have dreams of whatever success looks like for you, right? Even if it's $1 million and cars and whatever you think it is, like that path to success is going to be so much less likely if you're going around creating stressful interactions with other people. So, you know, if you can bring amazing energy to people, you can be liked and trusted, you can think clearly, you're going to have just so much advantage. So recognizing that the state you show up in and being committed to showing up the best you can for the people around you, I think is so critical. And therefore, okay, I'm in a bad mood, I'm not going to, what's the word? I'm not going to really allow myself to stay in this bad state. I got to find a way. I got to do whatever it takes to find a way to shift state before I show up for other people. And this is not really directly related to your question, but I thought of it earlier when you were introducing this topic. This morning, I don't have a specific reason. I have no idea. I woke up feeling pretty good, but by the time I was getting on a call with my team at 10, I really wasn't. Hold on. And as we were starting that meeting, I had the idea to just do a few minutes of meditation as a small team, but I didn't feel like leading it at all. I felt like I needed it, but I didn't feel like leading it. I just did it anyway. Just like, guys, I don't actually feel like leading this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I just, kind of went into doing what I would do and just narrating what I would do if I was alone, if they weren't there. What kind of breathing would I do? What kind of, focus, and, what would be the kind of self-guided meditation I would do alone. And I just did that and narrated it kind of very slowly, very calmly. And so you're just talking about stress management for yourself, but also for your team. And if I didn't do that, what kind of energy would I have brought to the meeting? It might not have been ultra detrimental. It might not have been, super problematic, but I don't think it would have been very lifting. I don't think it would have been very positive. And so maybe the meditation itself would have helped other people in the team. I didn't ask them. I could go back and find out. I imagine it was probably beneficial, but even if it wasn't beneficial for them, at least delaying the meeting by 3 to 4 minutes or 5 minutes for me to get in a better state at the beginning of the meeting, I think probably had an overall, pretty net positive effect. So
Thank you for sharing that specific example that happened to you this morning. I think commitment is a key word here when it comes to feeling well or being well within yourself. A lot of us think about mindfulness as if it's something, just take a moment to breathe. But I think you addressing the fact that it's a variety of things that we can actually do within a moment, and it changes from time to time. But the point is, you still need to commit to do something about it, right? It's that action that you need to take anyway, regardless of what you're feeling. So I can definitely relate to that. Thank you so much. With that, I'd like to invite the other two speakers back to this wonderful virtual space. And we're going to move on to our final section, which is where we talk about business challenges and how mindfulness can help solve. We have a prompt, or sort of like a scenario, so that it's, relevant enough to all three of you. And I'd like to hear from you on how you would address the situation. So the situation is this, right? One of your employees has been unresponsive, distant, and even underperforming. He or she reaches out and opens up to you about how he or she is feeling unmotivated and is even considering to resign. They may have mentioned that, they feel a little bit burnt out and they're no longer certain about why they're in the company. How do you go about managing the situation with mindfulness? Perhaps anyone can start. Rosalin, you can start and tell us how you would address this. Oh, has this ever happened to you at all?
Yes.
Yes. I think it's relatable. I think, if you run a company, you run a team, we're all humans, and demotivation is a very human phenomena. And tell us.
Correct. I'm very sure all of us has gone through a different kind of scenario, but end of the day, the same thing. Recently, I work a lot virtually with a lot of people. I do have virtual assistants who I work from Sabah Sarawak, which is I've never seen at all. We do work together, and we have been working together for 4 to 5 years. And there were times where I could see this person, she used to be a very, very good worker, and she used to be someone that's really, you give her one and she knows this what to do. And I didn't have much issue initial stage. Then recently it started affecting her performance and the way she responded, the way she was doing things. And I went like, it's not right with this girl. So then when I said, okay, let's have a chat. And that's the time I realized that she was actually going through a burnout, and she has health issues that she's been dealing with, and she doesn't know who to talk to. And she feels the work is became a routine. And then she feels that there is no, she don't feel part of the team sometimes, because she's already been taking away taking herself out of the situation all the time. So whenever things happen, she feels that connection is no longer there. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of things going on with you there. And none of us realize it initially. So that's where I actually sat down and had a chat with her by telling her that I'm okay if you're going to take a short break, because burnout happens to everybody. We just need to recharge. So in her case, I realized that she did not have a coping mechanism, or she didn't know how to get that recharged. So gave her some tips and also told her about how to be more, be self-aware, have a self-care, and tell herself that, you know, working is not the only thing that you do. And why are you together in the team is because we work together and it makes us happy. It's not only about job. And then we started sitting down and looking at the work processes that we go through. So when I started doing that, I started seeing the changes in her. And then started seeing the changes in her, started just seeing that she was more open up, and she started sitting down and the uncertainty went off. And she just told me, Rose, give me 10 minutes, I'll come back. While we are having those discussions, you know, I'm like, okay, Ken, we will have this call. It was all through Zoom. I said, okay, we will have this call after 10 minutes. And then when she came back after 10 minutes, she says that, I know what's the problem. And I was so afraid to tell you that this is my problem. So the situation of having a chat with her and without a conflict, or without scolding, or without going into that reprimanding method, you know, we're going and asking her, showing her the love and telling her that it's normal for whatever you're feeling, but just let's find out why you're feeling like that. So that made her to come back and say that she's been a lot of people on the family was been passing away when they're very young because of health condition. And she got very worked up about that. And she feels that if she don't take care of her health, she's going to die soon. I'm like, wow, that's a very big thing. So I actually told her, you know what, girl, this is something that you need to manage it, and it's not going to help if you're going to continue doing what you do. So I actually gave her a break, Rachel. I told her, take a break. Go for 1 to 2 months break. When you're ready, you come back. And then when you're ready, when you come back, let's see how we can actually work together, because I love the way you work, but you can't work in this state of whatever state that you are. So from then she took a break and she went and settled everything. And the relationship with her and the team is still very strong. So she didn't leave in a way that I couldn't do my job, you know, she's not going to like me. No, it was more of like, I can't do my job right now because of my condition, and thanks for letting me go, because she felt like if she's going to tell me she's going to stop, it's going to disappoint me. So there was a lot of expectation that was going on there. So that was the biggest challenge, because it was so difficult to let her go. But I had to do it because her state of mind was not well. And if I did not do that, then who's going to help? That's the thought came to me. So I made the decision with a very, very clear mind, being very mindful about what kind of issue we might put us in, because at the busy state, you know, one team are leaving is not easy. But somehow or other we pulled through. And today, like, she's actually coming down to KL, and she said, I'm going to come and see you. And she feels much better, and her entire scope has changed. So it's about the conversation that we have with them. I feel that talking to them, and each and my team member will actually agree with that when I tell them, I can really sit down with them and go so detailed to see why are you feeling what you're feeling. So when you actually dig deep, then you realize the main problem is not what are they saying, there's something else underlying to that. So that's how I actually solve a lot of my business challenge, by taking time, sitting down, chit-chatting with them, finding out what's going on, and end of the day we have a solution.
Beautiful. So you take time to have conversations and to really encourage them to communicate their needs.
Yes.
That's a very specific and relevant answer. And giving a break, I mean, back in the day, I don't think that's even possible, no? But somehow we live in an era now where hybrid work or time offs or sabbaticals are encouraged, in fact, becoming a norm. So I think that's great that you were able to offer that solution. Ayu, do you have any specific example?
Okay. If something happened in the business, first of all, we have to stay cool and calm in the beginning. Yeah, calm and focus. Yeah, take a deep breath, etc. And of course, make time for discussion with the person, and then we need, for myself, focus on the present moment, like, okay, what happened? Why she or he is not performing? And then why he or she is not responsive? And then not motivated, etc., etc. And then we're trying to find out. And of course, the next one is we need to notice our thought and also our emotion. If the fact that we are also don't have any chemistry with him or her, in my opinion, for our mental health and their mental health, so I would release. But if he or she wants to resign, but of course with the proper with a proper what you call it, the regulation for human resources, 30 days before, etc., etc., and also handover, etc. And also the next one is let go of attachment. Like maybe if he or she is not happy with the condition in our office, so that means to me, we just release him or her happily, and then saying that thank you for your support and for your etc., etc., in our company, and we are really appreciate it. And if that's the case that you need to go, so I will let you go, but please keep in touch. And this is a friendship, this is not goodbye. Although you are not my staff anymore, but we still being a partner, we can have a coffee and we can have a chat outside. So that's
wonderful. Yes, very important keyword here. Let go of the attachment, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a tough one, and thank you for sharing that specific example. Eli, anything to share? I mean, your approach to the challenge. Have you experienced
Sure.
it?
Yeah, just I really appreciate what Rosalin and Ayu have said so far. Really good tips. Actually, what Ayu was just saying about letting go of attachment, one of the first things I made a note on when you brought this up was how I think when we find out all of a sudden that there's something wrong with someone, and maybe that person is integral to our livelihood, there's going to be this instant kind of fear often, especially if there's somebody that's, really mission critical to your business, right? That you've got a couple different types of fear going on. One is probably the fear that your business would be disrupted and that you're going to be sucked into a lot of work, or your clients will be, disrupted, something like that. And the other might be that there's some judgment on you and or your culture, your systems, like everything you've built. Is like if somebody's choosing to leave or not happy with it, then that's kind of a fear that there's a judgment of you. And I've heard somebody say, just kind of on a side topic here, recently I heard someone say that all fears fall under one of two buckets, either fear of death or fear of other people's opinions. And those are probably the two. It's like fear of death because you lose your livelihood, right? Anything that threatens our livelihood triggers that fear of death. And the other one is fear of other people's opinions. So it's like if you think somebody's passing judgment, or you're worried that what you've built isn't what you thought it was, something like that. So noticing those things, are knowing that those are potentially at play in your own emotional world and psyche. What's most critical, I think, in those situations is really letting go of any attachment to outcome. It's just recognizing that if you're attached to an outcome, then you have an agenda, and your ability to have a conversation with that person that's genuinely curious and interested in their well-being will be tainted. It will be materially tainted, or at least perceptually tainted, because they will potentially be perceiving that you have the agenda. So you genuinely have to let go of the agenda. Like, okay, because either there's something misunderstood, and once that is cleared up, they will want to stay, or there is something fundamentally misaligned and they should leave. It's just uncovering that, right? So it's the conversation. And I think Rosalin and I already talked a bit about how to have those conversations, but just being able to focus on that person with total curiosity and interest to understand what's going on with them, and not through the lens of what you think you want for your business. You have to be able to separate those.
Agree. I think the fear of judgment is something that compromises our ability to take decisions most times, whether it's judgment of others, and then the other little voice inside of us that is an even bigger judge than the outside world. And I think that's the one that dictates us most times. Letting go of the outcome is definitely an important one, but a hard one for leaders, because
It's hard.
It's two ends, right? We need to be in control. We need to stay on top of the game. And at the same time, we need to know when it's time to let go and move on to other situations. So thank you for that. I'd like to throw one more question for this section and to go further into this conversation of challenges. Do any of you have like a specific activity or culture that you've incorporated into your company when it comes to keeping your team motivated and balanced during high pressure periods at your organizations? Perhaps you do something on Mondays. I mean, Eli, you just meditated with your team. I mean, there's different things that we try to do with our colleagues and team members. So perhaps our speakers today can share some of the things that they have incorporated. Eli, you can start first since you were the last, and then,
Sure.
Yeah.
Company-wide, probably most companies have at least one meeting every week where everybody's supposed to be present, but we focus our Friday team-wide, company-wide calls on sharing learnings, talking about, like, we don't focus so much. We do some business updates, but we try to make it much more human connected conversations about, like, we do conversations around our core values and breakout rooms and just connecting with each other. I think one thing that helps those to be effective is to make sure people understand the purpose of them and why they're so important. If they think it's mandatory, then it feels like obligation. But if they understand the value, so just talking more about the value, it's like, guys, like, if we don't reconnect, if humans don't have connection, if we try to just focus on work and we think it's only about output and we think we're too busy, and that taking time to connect with each other and reconnect energetically with other people, thinking about our purpose, like why we exist in the first place, and why we actually like being here. If we don't carve out time for these things, we will not actually be more productive, and it's just a trap. And like helping people realize that, trying to get some buy-in so that people prioritize the same things, not just because they're made to do it, but because they start to see that they come back refreshed, and making sure that we put enough focus on what happens in those company events, that unfortunately having someone in charge that now is just so good at, I think, whoever is in charge of your culture, if it's not the founders, if someone else, if you bestow that responsibility on somebody other than you, then making sure you've got somebody to curate the culture that really is your company, like really gets what you're trying to create. And just having conversations about what kind of experiences that we're creating in those Friday calls or our regroups, things like that, just to make sure that we really are creating experiences that refresh people. I think that's one answer that I would give.
Agree. Beautiful. The check-ins and making sure that whatever that's incorporated is not just coming from your mind and your brain and your wishes. It has to also be relevant to the team members, and therefore listening to what they have to say is definitely fundamental. Thank you for that tip. Hopefully some of our leaders here today might incorporate that into their own team culture. Ayu, do you have anything that you do with your team to keep them balanced and motivated when it's like super stressful?
Thank you. Because my agency is actually more like work from home mostly, so all of my staff are doing remote working. We do have like gathering like for certain occasion, like in Indonesia and maybe in Malaysia, we just had idul fitri, so we have those kind of shawalan, those greetings each other. or if not, a birthday celebration, if maybe one of the teams are having birthday. So we usually having the meetings, the dates. The offline meeting is, we can have it together with the birthday celebration, and mostly we do it as a surprise. Like we don't really tell them that, okay, we're going to have birthday celebration. No, we're just having, okay, we have a meeting, and then suddenly we just have this cake and we sing together and we pray together for our togetherness. And the first one is that we need to share our vision. We need to have the clear goal or the same clear vision where we are going to go for our corporation. And then the second one, we need to have a regular sharing of belonging. And this is for our team. And let's create values to our clients and everyone around us, every stakeholders. And the last one is always appreciate each other in our words or in action, behavior, attitude, etc. So that's my tips.
I love that. The love language or gifts and rewards and appreciation definitely is something that keeps everyone motivated, and also recognizing their cultural, celebrations. I think that's important as well. Rosalin, what about you? Like anything that you've incorporated that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Yes, of course. I love the way how Ella and you said about the way they connect with the team, because we do that as well. But something that we do very, which I feel that has helped us a lot, is we work virtually, right? Like I mentioned, I have Shrawa. I even have a person from India who works for me as a virtual assistant when it comes to digital marketing work. And I do work with a lot of locals as well. So I have about 15 of them in the team right now. And every week when we have our meeting, before we start our meeting, I believe in transparency and communication, because I feel if that's not there, we cannot actually do things virtually properly, because then we have a lot of things we want to hide from each another. So we have the session called before, what I feel like expressing. So before we start any meeting that we have in the company, we will have this round of where we call it as before, that when the person is telling, okay, what I feel like expressing, and when he or she is actually sharing, truthful, and none of us interrupt, we don't justify, we don't say anything until the person finishes what they feel like saying. And that session is not actually to justify why we did what we did, or it's not to make us feel bad about how we make other people feel. It's more of to know how are we feeling at that time about anyone, or even just about this. So we do go through that with everybody, and they take about 1 minute also to express themselves. And then the moment that happens, I also practice. I also tell everybody, okay, let's do a tapping session of bringing an energy mode. I normally focus on positive energy. Let's just bring that positive energy into us. Or sometimes if I feel the room is like too cold and too much of we're expressing too much negativity, and then I say, okay, let's go into golden heart. So when this happens, right, every time when we do, after you clearing up what's in your heart and in your mind, and you already have it out there, you become very light. And when you do your tapping, which you tap your meridian point and you put in the positivity into that makes it more focused. And with that positivity, the meeting goes on very smoothly. The agenda just gets well, and everybody gets charged up for the week. So this is 2 things that's been working very well for us for the past 3 years.
Thank you, Rosalin. I love that. I mean, when it comes to team check-in, sometimes, it is important to give that 30-second, 1 minute opportunity for each person to have their say and kind of put them in that position of empowerment. Because sometimes in group settings, like things gets lost in translation, and perhaps the individual may not feel like they need to participate. So I think that's a wonderful example. And Eli here said that there is the clearing method. Okay, there's always a book that talks about everything. So with that, thank you so much to our speakers. I'd like to move on to conclude our session today. Firstly, by once again, thank you to Eli, Ayu, and Rosalin for sharing your insights. I trust that has been several aha moments and opportunities for reflection. Now I would like to open up the space to our audience who are here today to share their questions or thoughts to the panel discussion based on what has been shared. You can take a moment now to drop your comments and we'll be monitoring it. And don't be shy, our speakers are here to basically interact with you. We have about 10 minutes before we wrap up, so feel free to shoot your questions. I bring it back to our topic today, which is the power of mindfulness in business decision-making. What all of you have heard today is the relevance and also the difference when it comes to practicing self-awareness within different organizations. Not all of us have access to things like yoga or meditation, or perhaps some of these terms may even be new to us. And therefore, there's no pressure for you to address that in that manner. And I'd like to invite us to basically, bring more attention to the process. The goal may be one thing in the future, but ideally today we learn how to take the pressure away from having to fulfill our future visions and learning how to appreciate the steps that are required to get to where we want to be. We wanted to talk about mindfulness in a business setting also to ask ourselves, like, how can we be less mindless and become more supportive to the needs of those around us? This is essentially something that we can ask ourselves every day as the starting point if the topic of mindfulness is something that appeals to you. All right, we have one question that I think we have time for, and so I'll bring it to the floor. In your opinion, how can we empower more leaders to become more mindful? That's a fair one, and perhaps all speakers can give their answer to it, and then we will wrap up today's session.
Go ahead, Rosalin.
Can we have all speakers?
Okay, so in my point, right, in my opinion, that as much as we think everyone knows what is mindfulness, everybody know what is this topic, but it's still a topic that has not been out there fully. So creating an awareness of this and talking more about it, where we has to take in the role of making it more interesting so that everybody who feels, and when they hear us talk about mindfulness, and when they hear the benefit of mindfulness, and when they know the methods, there's a lot of methods that we can actually use, like how Eli was mentioning just now. There's so many ways of us which we can do it, but all of us have a way, or all of us get connected with one or two methods that's very close to our heart, where we know when we do this, we get that. So we need to literally put it out there, educate more people, and they will be able to see it the way we see it. That's how we can actually empower more leaders. That's my point. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Rosalin. And that is true. Having sessions like what we're having today is a starting point towards creating that conversation and awareness of mindfulness in the workplace. In respect of time, I'm going to leave that question at that because another question just popped up and I think we can address it. The question comes, by the way, the question just now came from Natzira. Hopefully that answered you. The next question is from Diana. Thank you to all speakers for your wisdom. May I know if there is a way to practice being mindful and calm when you already have severe anxiety, brackets like me? Thank you, Diana, for that vulnerable question. And I'd like to invite any speaker to address the question.
Can I say that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, Ella, you can.
No, go. I was saying, go ahead.
Go,
Okay.
Ayu.
Yeah. Every one of us having problems, Diana, yeah, like including me also, and then maybe some of us having problems. But the first thing that we need to be more mindful is, first one is accepting Yeah, accepting that we have the problem. And then, as I previously said, that just let it go. Just let it go by having like meditation and of course patience. Yeah, be patient. Like I said before, maybe Eli or Rosalin can edit, but to me, in my point of view, is that every problem should have a good meaning out of it. Yeah. So we need to be patient and then trust the process. Like Eli said, that it's always come with the perfect timing. So yeah, and then also you can have something that makes you happy, like maybe doing sport or cooking or something that you can enjoy. So that's for me. How about you, Eli?
I think
maybe-
Eli,
Yeah, I popped
thank
some thoughts in the chat real quick, but I just think the biggest thing I would say is that none of us ever have the ability to be positive. We understand anyone else's experience because we're always just living, probably pretty similar, but also not the same. And I've never struggled with consistently severe anxiety. I've only experienced severe anxiety maybe a few times in my life. And so I would not be sure I could understand exactly what you're going through, but I really do believe that all of us have the potential to learn our own nervous systems and our own minds and our own like physiology. So I would just say there's almost for sure there's hope to make it better over time, and just keep trying new things. The one I popped in the chat is Healthy Minds, is an app that I really like, that the Dalai Lama kind of helped get started funding wise. I interviewed the founder and I've been using the app and I really like it. It's very, very simple, so easy to use. You can even do these walking meditations. And so just practice. I think the last thing I would say is that much of the science and research that's happening now on meditation is showing that our physical brains are actually changed by the practice. So we can remap our neurology to some degree with practice. So just give it time. It may not be like do this one time and all your problems are gone, but if we practice over time, you might start to see some improvements.
Thank you for sharing a very specific app, Eli. And to Diana, hopefully you can experiment with what Eli has suggested and see how that might work for you. Thank you as well, Ayu. Very, very insightful. So I'd like to close the Q&A session and move on to our conclusion. And I'm very thankful to all three of you for being here today. I can't even express. I think it was very productive and thoughtful, and all of you were able to share very honest insights, which I'm sure our community would be very thankful for. I believe that your knowledge will be a reference point to anyone who is trying to explore their own journey of mindfulness, whether it's personal or at work. So today's session is only a small little part towards a bigger thing that I hope that we can do as a collective. I'd like to invite everyone for like a final group photo before we wrap up and say thank you. If anyone is here now, feel free to switch on your cameras. We'd love to see your lovely faces. Or if you're too shy. All right. Do we have everyone? Let's just remove the spotlight first. Nice. I know, one more minute. Beautiful. Hi, everyone. Love to see your faces. Thank you for showing up. Let's just take a quick group photo so that we can remember this moment forever. 3. Oh, anyone else wanna? No? Okay. 3, 2, 1, smile. Did we get it, Nina? Yes, beautiful. So once again, I'd like to thank all of you for your time, for being here today, to our speakers, so much wisdom, and we can't wait to turn today's session into more content that we will be sharing with our community. On behalf of Karma Marketing and the rest of the team, thank you so much, and we hope to see you again. Have a good day. Happy Friday.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
everyone.
Happy
Thank you.
Friday. Bye. Thank you so much.
Awesome job, guys. Bye.
Nina, what?